it was crazy because I was screaming off the top of my lungs, and I remember listening to myself, like I can hear myself scream, and I was like, "Is it me or is it just echoing in here?" And then I hear out of nowhere, and I hear my trainer. He was like, "Yes," and I'm like looking at my trainer. I'm like, "Why do I hear him so clear? It was like a dead silence."
Front row seat.
Hello, I'm Shane Mercer, and I'm your host. This is Front Row Seat, part of the Millions Podcast Network. And for this inaugural episode, we are joined by legendary UFC light heavyweight fighter Ovince Saint Preux, OSP. Thank you for joining me, man. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. Yourself?
Hey, I'm doing well. You got a really big fight coming up. Mauricio Shogun Rua, another legend of the game. How you feeling?
I'm feeling pretty good. I came out here. I'm actually out in Vegas right now. I came out probably about 10 days, 12, you can say 2 weeks before my fight to actually get, acclimated. I'm at the PI getting a lot of treatment done, getting extra training at, Extreme Couture or whatnot. So I'm feeling pretty good.
Hey, good to hear that. When you say you flew out, where are you coming from? You coming from Florida?
I came out from Knoxville, Tennessee.
Right. Okay. So Knoxville. You're still training out in Knoxville. What is it? Knoxville MMA Academy?
Yeah, Knoxville Martial Arts Academy.
Right. Yeah, awesome, man. Well, I want to dive into the fight, in a little bit more in depth. But first, I want to give your fans, give the audience, give the listeners a bit of a sense of sort of what brought you to this pivotal moment in your career. So, tell me a little bit about your time, when you first started really getting into athletics back in high school. I'm probably going to say this incorrectly, but Omakali High School? Omakali High School. You were like a three-sport athlete there. You were wrestling, football, and track. Is that right?
Yes, definitely.
So tell me a little bit about that, those high school days and kind of growing up there and, competing as a three-sport athlete.
It's kind of funny because I really didn't start playing any sports. I only played football 1 year when I was in middle school, and that was when I was in seventh grade. But when I was in seventh grade, I did eighth grade during the summer. I was in a program where I did eighth grade during the summer. Technically, I went from, I was done with seventh grade. I remember playing football, and then from there, I did eighth grade during the summer. Then I was in ninth grade, and that's when I got involved pretty much in the three-letter sports. Like, everything else just kind of came to. Started wrestling, ran track, and well, we had no choice but to run track. I ended up being pretty good at track because my football coach was the head track coach, and he wanted all the guys to do track, during the off season to keep yourself in shape, and my wrestling coach was my English teacher. And he was like, "Hey, if you're not doing nothing, you might as well come out and wrestle." And I just went ahead and did that. Did well in all three sports. Track and field. I did extremely well in wrestling. Ended up getting my senior year. Ended up placing second in state. And with football, that's what football took me to Knoxville, Tennessee, at the University of Tennessee. Got a scholarship there. Played 4 years at UT, and graduated. Then comes a mixed martial arts career, which probably shouldn't have never happened. I actually stumbled in the mixed martial arts. So I didn't know what I wanted to do after my football career. So when I graduated, I just walked into the gym and I was like, you know what? I'm going to do something to keep me in shape. I guess I picked up on it rather quickly, and, one thing led to another.
Yeah. You really wanted to be a football player.
Oh yeah, definitely. Guys growing up, especially growing up in Florida, in the state of Florida, when you're a football player, that's like one of the number one things you think about. It like, I want to go to the league. I want to go to the league. So, and for us too, like the community that we grew up in, like, a lot of times sports is our way out. And it was a situation when, they use sports to get out.
4 years with the Tennessee Volunteers. I mean, that's a pretty big team in NCAA football. But at what point did you realize that, the NFL dream wasn't going to happen?
The thing about it is you really don't realize it. Even when you're done, you still think something might be able to happen. So you never really realize it, because a lot of times I'll tell people, like, why'd you stop playing football? Why'd you quit playing football? And I always tell people, I never quit football. Football quit on me. So, at the end of the day, it's just like when it came to it, just you get some of your old teammates sitting around you talking, And when you're talking, you be like, okay, I guess we're done now. So what's next? And so you get guys who start off different careers or whatnot. I walked into a gym and, I just walked into a gym. I wanted to take a kickboxing class. Kickboxing turned into essentially MMA, and kind of took that and ran with it.
What was it that sort of pulled you into that gym, that had you walk into that gym and sort of be like, let me go check this out?
Actually, one of my fraternity brothers.
Oh,
He told me, I guess one of our trainers at that time, Joey, he was taking like a business management class or something, and he did a presentation on mixed martial arts, and he found that to be interesting. He was like, hey, called him afterwards and was like, hey, what do you think I can do to train with you? He was like, just come by the gym and train. He went one day, and the next day he brought me along, and we're throwing punches and kicks and stuff, and I was like, all right, this is kind of cool. And then after that, my head coach Eric was like, okay, now we're gonna work on I'm gonna show you what an armbar and a triangle is. I was like, armbar triangle, and I was like, I'm thinking to myself, I thought I was walking to a kickboxing class, but essentially it was a mixed martial arts class, and I kind of, like I said, initially I was doing it to stay in shape. And then from staying in shape, I kind of went full forth with it.
When you mentioned your frat brother there, we're talking about Omega Psi Phi?
Yeah, Omega Psi Phi.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
So,
and I understand that, they really played more than just a role in pulling you into the gym, but I understand that fraternity really played a role in giving you the confidence to step into a cage.
yeah, it's crazy. Like, I don't talk about it a lot, but with my fraternity, we tend to be a bit rambunctious, have a don't care type attitude about stuff. If you see our personalities, if you see certain stuff that we do, like you see a lot of like great athletes. You get like, Michael Jenkins, you get like Shaquille O'Neal, Michael Jordan. If you see their attitude, their persona or whatnot, it kind of gives you that, I guess, demeanor of what we carry. And we tend to have a lot of athletes that play in the league too. So whether it's football, basketball, we tend to have a lot of, guys, and we tend to be the stern ones or whatnot.
Talk to me about some of your favorite fighters. Who's inspired you? Who at the time when you were just getting into MMA were you watching, on the pay-per-views, and you're like, yo, I gotta watch this dude fight?
Man, to be honest, man, like when I first started watching fighting, like I used to watch a whole bunch of Pride videos. And of course, like even before I fought Shogun, I was a big Shogun fan. Just watching, but I used to watch a ton of Pride videos. And whether it's like watching Shogun, Crow Cop, I used to love watching Crow Cop just because she was a southpaw too. Same thing with Ernesto Hughes. Ernesto Hughes is one of the top guys I like watching the way he like chopping people legs down. But going from there is just like, even if you go into the UFC and stuff, before I ended up making it, just watching different styles or whatnot, like watching GSP style, like watching him fight. But I think my top guys were probably Crow Cop and Ernesto Hughes. Even though Ernesto Hughes didn't do MMA, he did K1 kickboxing. Even though he didn't do MMA, I used to love watching him. And everybody used to talk about Shogun, and then he was my guy. I mean, I'm still a fan. I'm still a fan. I mean, he's been doing it I don't know. He's been doing it as long as probably twice as amount of years I've been doing it. So like just watching the old Pride videos, you watching him. So just watching him, and also like guy that I actually trained with, that I trained with a ton of times, that I ended up love watching was Hendo, Dan Henderson.
Yeah.
Like watching him is just like, because you always used to see him, and like I remember training with him, I was like, why do we like watching videos on him? I was like, why did he move like that? Why did he move a certain way? I remember I grabbed a hold of him and realized how dense he was, and I was like, okay, that's the reason he moved that way. But again, that H pump that he had, it's definitely an eye opener, because a couple times during the training session he landed that, and I was like, oh, okay, so this is how it feels like. So
How important is it to get hit with those kind of bombs in training?
it just will remind you that you're alive.
Yeah.
The thing about it is, it's just like playing football. It's just like a lot of times you have to go live. People are like, well, I don't want to do that because I don't want to get hurt. you have to go live so you can feel a certain hit. So you can, okay, I feel this, I can put my body into place by doing this. Because, sparring is, there's different situations. People talk about sparring and stuff. But, for me, like, I don't try to spar all the time, but I definitely spar to get the work that I need. I'm not a boxer at all. And sometimes if I need to feel how to get hit, I go in the boxing room, I'm like, look, I'm coming because I'm going in their world. I'm out there. Look, I'm essentially coming in here to get my butt whooped. So don't kill me, but I'm gonna get my butt whooped. So I go in there and I get cracked a couple times. I'm like, oh my God. But at the same time, when I actually start doing MMA sparring, it's completely different. That's completely different. Like, getting hit by boxing, getting hit by, somebody that does MMA is different. I mean, with MMA, obviously you got to watch out for the kicks and the leg kicks and the high kick. But, when you get hit, it's completely different. We still learning. We're still not fully effective into the boxing game, but, it's important to actually get those hits because you need to know how it feels like. Because, sometimes people don't realize, I tell people I'd rather get hit in the face than the body. And some people will be like, well, knees don't really bother me. And I'm like, you haven't really got hit by a knee. So if you get hit by a knee in the liver, I don't care who you are, you're going to sit down and try to reevaluate your life.
Oh, that reminds me of the Giga kick, which is pretty popular right now. You know, that kick to the liver. Oh, dropping guys.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's that. You get a front kicks to the body, and it just kills the diaphragm. And when you start doing that, there's only so much you can take. After that, you can't do anything.
Let me ask you about this then, because when you started your career, you had your amateur fights. You went 5-0 in your amateur career, and then you're like, all right, it's time to go pro. And then that didn't go so well for you right off the bat. A couple of losses to start your pro career. Tell me where you were at after those first two losses in your pro career.
Um, Essentially, what happened was like, you know, a lot of times when you get different organization or you get different people, different organization that you first start fighting for. I was coming in pretty much as a guy that essentially didn't know anything, and when I was coming in, the guys they were coming in. I was coming in to actually lose, to be honest, and they'll be like, "Hey, this guy right here is a boxer." And I'm like, "Okay, cool." And then, we pull up his boxing record, went 5-0 as a boxer. And I remember looking at that. And the day of the fight, I found out he was a three-time state wrestling champ. And I was thinking to myself, like, well, hold up. You told me he was a boxer. Now he's a three-time state wrestling champ. Our game plan was to take him down to the ground. And, I was like, okay, that's out the window. So, you know, we still stuck to the game plan, but I was doing more striking with him. I was actually beating him in the striking. And he just, it went decision. I remember it went decision, and I was thinking to myself, like, I know I'm going to lose this because, I'm in the home crowd. So, just my first couple fights, like, it's just me training in the aspect of, like, not really. I was good in the gym, but, then wasn't good in the strength program. Like, I was always strong, but I can only push myself so far and for so long when I'm training, when I'm doing my strength and conditioning by myself. I think I was 0-2. Then at one point in time, I was 2-4. And then I got with a strength coach. And from there, I had like 8 wins in a row. And I had like 8 wins in a row. I remember I ended up getting signed to Strike Force. And I remember there was a period, I think 2010, 2011, or 2011, 2012, where for Strike Force, I remember I had a fight November 19th, December 7th, and January 7th. So I essentially had 3 fights within 5 weeks.
Wow.
And that's all 3 fights with Strike Force within 5 weeks. And I told myself I'll never do that again.
Yeah, that's a little bit crazy. That's a little much on the body.
Yeah.
So then let's just fast forward a little bit. Then in 2013, you had your first fight in the UFC. What was that
Yeah.
experience like? Tell me about that very first walkout.
Well, it was weird because I ended up winning by like a technical decision, sort of, kind of. When I got my hand raised and they were like, Ovince Saint Preux winner by like a a technical decision. And I was like, what the hell is that? My first fight, I fought Gian Vellante at Newark, New Jersey at the TD Center. And I told myself when I walked in, I was like, oh my God, I just need to get off. I just need to get out of this first fight. Once I get out of this first fight, I'll be perfectly fine. So I got out, and when I got out, I was good. But I wasn't satisfied the way I won. So,
Mm.
my next fight, I want to come out and make a statement, and that I did.
Yeah, I would say you made a series of statements. You won 6 of your first 7 fights in the UFC. One of them against a guy that you grew up watching in Pride, Shogun, who we, you know.
Yeah.
And talk to me about that first fight against Shogun.
Well, initially, I wasn't supposed to fight him.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, I wasn't supposed to fight him. I remember getting a phone call like, okay, UFC travel. We typically travel on Tuesdays. That following Wednesday, the Wednesday before that, I get a phone call saying this, hey, I think Jimmy Manuel was supposed to fight him. And Jimmy couldn't make it because he got hurt. And the thing about the UFC and traveling to Brazil or whatnot, you need to get the visas and stuff. And we couldn't get the visa and stuff situated for anybody to come in and take a last minute fight. So since I was the co-main event, guess what? They bumped me up to the main event. And they were like, I get the phone call. They were like, hey, you fighting Shogun? I'm like, I'm fighting who? And they were like, you fighting Shogun? And I was like, oh, okay. And I was like, oh, man, I was thinking to myself, I was like, man, this is really, really early. I don't know if I can handle this. It was a lot of pressure. You know what? And then after that, I told myself, you know what? I don't care. Whatever he throws at me, I'm going to give it back. I guess he threw something at me. I gave him something really, really good, and it was over in 36 seconds.
I was going to say it ended real fast.
Yeah, it was over in 36 seconds. It was crazy because I was screaming off the top of my lung, and I remember listening to myself, like I can hear myself scream, and I was like, "Is it me or is it just echoing in here?" And then I hear out of nowhere, and I hear my trainer. He was like, "Yes," and I'm like looking at my trainer. I'm like, "Why do I hear him so clear?" It was like a dead silence in the arena because we were in Brazil. It was like
Right.
when I mean it was a dead silence. It was like a dead silence, and I was like, "Oh, I hope I make it out of here alive," because I know the Brazilian fans are pretty intense. So that happened, and that was actually pretty good. But my trainer did tell me that after that, he was like, "Well, you just beat Shogun, so there's not going to be any easy fights after this."
Yeah.
And so yeah, I'm like, all right, cool, I understand.
So now here we are, and you meet Shogun again coming up here. I mean, talk to me about, where you're at heading into this huge fight. Again, a big pay-per-view, UFC 274. You're on the main card.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like I was looking at, I haven't really looked at the undercard yet, but the pay-per-view card I know is Donna Cerrone, Joe Lozant, me, Shogun, Michael Chandler, Tony Ferguson, um, Rose versus Carla, and Oliveira versus Gaethje. And I'm like looking at this card, and I'm like,
It's a
okay,
stacked card, man.
but I'm looking like fighters. We all talk. We do this a lot. Fighters, they'll look at the card and be like, okay, this might be a potential bonus. This might be a potential bonus. I'm looking at the main card, like everybody has a potential making a bonus in the main in a pay-per-view card, and I'm like, huge. So I was looking out like, okay, I'm excited to fight. This is a good rematch, but at the same time, this main card is going to be something crazy.
That's funny. That's really an interesting insight there. So you guys aren't even necessarily going into it like, oh, who am I gonna like? Obviously, you're focused on the guy you're fighting, but there's a lot of focus on the other fighters and who you're competing with for those bonuses.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, you just want to fighters do that all the time. It's just like you look at it and be like, when you look at it and be like, okay, this person has a potential getting a bonus. This person has a potential. Like Gaethje, he's known for getting bonuses. Typically, if you have a good, you know, headline to fight, which is going to be, you get 2 belts that's on the line right now, and typically if they're really good fights, they automatically get bonuses. So, because I remember I had a fight in New York when GSP fought Michael Bisping, and then Rose beat Joanna, and somebody else had a bonus. And I remember I had a share bonus. So, but the way the fight was, the bonuses, like they had good fights that night. like you had guys that had knockouts, and I ended up getting a really good knockout, but I ended up sharing my bonus, and I was like thinking to myself, like I didn't want that, but it is what it is. I got the bonus. I wasn't complaining about that, but it's just like you do as a fighter be like, hey, you want to make some extra money? You want to look at the card and be like, okay, I can potentially make this happen. But this card, I'm like, it's going to be tough to make this happen.
How much of an impact does that have on you afterwards when you don't get the bonus?
It don't happen. I mean, it's no impact for me. At the end of the day, it's just like as long as I get my hand raised, I'm perfectly fine with that. So I don't like my biggest focus is at the end of the night to get my hand raised. Getting the bonus is a plus.
So again, you've got Shogun standing in front of you here. What's sort of the game plan this time around? I mean, obviously, I'm sure you'd love to put him out in 30 seconds again, but can you prepare for something like that?
Not necessarily. I don't know what his game plan going to be. He might blitz me. He might not. I'm pretty decent counter puncher, so that's how I'll put him out in 36 seconds the first time. And also too, like the Shogun that I fought back then is pretty much not the guy that I'm fighting right now. And I'm a completely different guy too. Like when I make up my mind about something, I make up my mind. The past couple of years, my career been kind of up and down roller coaster type of deal, and essentially that's a lot be my fault. Like it depends how I come in the fight week. If I come in the fight week 230, I'm gonna have a problem. If I come in the fight week, like if I come in the fight week and I'm like at 222, at most 223, I'm really really good. If I come like right now my weight is doing really good, and I plan to come in fight week that Tuesday, hopefully about about 221, 220. So that gives me about, relatively 14 pounds to cut. If I do that, typically when I do that, when I come in the fight week around the 221, 220, I typically get a bonus.
So you're looking ahead, thinking, "Hey, that bonus has my name on it."
Yeah, I mean, there's been one occasion that I came in and I didn't get a bonus, but I felt so good that fight too. So yeah, it's just I know how I am and I know what I'm capable of doing, and I'm just gonna put that into effect.
You mentioned your career on a bit of a roller coaster. Some ups and some downs over the last few years. You're coming off of two losses, the last one to Tanner Boser. What lessons have you learned in those most recent losses?
Um, I'm not the spring chicken that I used to be.
Uh,
Um, and it's that too, and I make it harder than I need to make it. When I first started in the game, I always used to walk around like pretty much under 225. So my weight cut used to be exceptionally easy. And then metabolism starts slowing down. I'm one of the veterans. I think I was talking to Brad Tavares the other day, and he'd been in the UFC since I think he said 2013 or 12. I forget. And he was like, I'm 20 fights deep, and he was like, they was like, he asked how much fights you got, and I was like, I'm pretty sure I'm about 25 fights deep in the UFC right now. And then so that put me in I guess the veteran status. So now it's me. I can't take any shortcuts anymore. Like now it's essentially me. Like, and if I do something, I have to do it full force. I got to do it pretty much 100%. I can't like slack off here and then after that make it in the back end because I walk around a little heavier than I used to. So I got to make sure my diet is on point. If my diet is on point, my cardio is going to be where it needs to be. Um, so it's just little things that I tell myself to do, which again is easier said than done too.
Okay, I'm going to throw a number out to you because you're kind of hitting on it now. And you mentioned the number of fights. You're now up over the number 40. You've got more than 40 fights. Shogun's 40 years old. You're approaching that same number yourself. Just talk to me a little bit about the mental aspect of approaching that number 40.
It all depends like how you treat your body. A lot of people be like, oh, it just you you're getting older. It's not that you're getting older. It's just the fact that I think, for me, I think like I still feel fast and explosive, and I still feel like I do a lot of the things. It's just me now. It's just I don't kill myself in the gym like I used to. There's no reason to, just for the simple fact you can sit down and read something. I remember being a young fighter, you used to be in the gym, kill yourself, whatever happens, you just complete chaos. Now you're just like, okay, let's bring it down a bit. Let's make sure you're taking care of your body. So I do kill myself in the gym, but I spend say 2/3 of the time I kill myself in the gym. The other 1/3 I'm doing some type of treatment. Pretty much every day this week. Actually, yeah, every day this week I have some type of treatment going on every single day this week. And I make sure I do that because I need my body to actually work the way it needs to. Been through a lot of wars. I mean, I tell people when I train, you're essentially basically training your body to deliver punishment and receive punishment. So, at the end of the day, as you're doing that, you want to make sure you're taking care of your body at the same time.
Yeah, I think a lot of people out there look at the sport, especially mixed martial arts, and think, oh, it's all about delivering punishment, and of course that's what you want to do when you get out there. But how important is that aspect of training to absorb punishment?
It's very important. If you really think about it, I can dominate a fight for 3 rounds, regardless. Like, I remember people used to come up to me and be like, "Man, I watched your fight." They were like, "Why did you have to, why did it have to end that quickly?" I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And he was like, "Well, you need a." He was like, "Man, I paid money to watch it, but you need to make it last a little longer." And I looked at him and I was like, "For what?" And I was like, "Even though I'm completely dominating the fight, it doesn't matter. I'm still getting hit too. Even though I'm dominating the fight, he's still getting his shots in on me, and I can feel those at the end of the night." So I was like, if I can get a chance to get it out of there, I'm good. And there's no fighter just want to be like, "Oh, I'm just gonna stay in here and fight this guy this whole entire time." And I was like, I mean, you might be dominating him pretty much. You might be, you know, landing over, 50% of your punches, and he's landing probably, you know, 20 or 30% of his punches. Don't matter. You're still getting hit though.
Exactly right. So let's talk a little bit about your career. Um, this is a huge pay-per-view event. How important is it to you to sort of be on a pay-per-view as opposed to like a UFC fight night?
I tend to do really good in pay-per-views, but if I come in the way I need to, I do exceptionally well in pay-per-views. But with the pay-per-view cards now, it's different because the fight nights are held in Vegas and not a lot of people there. The pay-per-view card, it's actually going to be my first fight that I actually had a crowd in a while, so that should be exceptionally well. But yeah, that's actually pretty exciting, pretty freaking exciting. Um, but the pay-per-view cards, people keep an eye on those cards. People tend not to forget the pay-per-view cards because they only happen once a month, and they can be
Hmm.
talking about that card for the rest of the month. I mean, shoot, last month you had the pay-per-view card with Aljo, and he had a big upset, and everybody's still talking about that.
Yeah, yeah, still talking about it. Exactly. Yeah, a lot of chat going on there. A lot of fighters throwing their names out there, looking at trying to take their shots at Aljo. And you're right. Yeah, the storylines live on for a long time after a pay-per-view.
Oh yeah, definitely, definitely. I mean, even
Yeah.
with that, he's just like, even with fights like that, I was like, a lot of people just kind of wrote him off or whatnot. And when you kind of see him and you seen him training and you seen how he was going, I'm like, man, Aljo was looking really good. But even with that, he's just looking at him and his mentality, his mindset. He's just like, okay, you can tell he was a different person. But but yeah, pay-per-view cards, they typically do what they typically get you the fans that you need.
Well, let me ask you this: since we're talking about storylines, what's the OSP headline after UFC 274?
Um, I don't know. Like the thing about it is, I can tell you. It's funny because I can put pretty much 100 different scenarios how I'm going to finish the fight. And what's crazy about it, none of those scenarios ever happened. So the only scenario I can give you that I'm pretty much 100% confident in is I'm going to get my hand raised at the end of the night.
Where does a win over Shogun take you next? Where does your career go after you get that W and you get your hand raised on May 7th?
I could say me still climbing the ladders. Like me, to be honest, like, and especially looking at people like Glover, who I fought before, and like
Hmm.
literally, it's crazy. I remember fighting him, and I was like, I remember fighting him. I sat down and had a conversation with him. He was like, because I told him, and I looked at him. I was like, why do I feel like you was in better shape than you ever were before? And he was like, bro, like when to this day, I think when he fought Anthony Smith, because I fought Ben Rothwell that night too when he fought Anthony Smith, and he was like, look, that night when I fought you, that's probably the best shape I ever was in my life. And I'm like, what are you talking about? He was like, I've never been in that type of shape again. But that was like one of the best shapes I've ever been in my life. And I was like, why you chose that night to be in the best shape? Because he was like, I think, because I asked him that, and he was like, because I looked at him when he came in, I was like, man, he looked like he's in shape. So, and it showed during the fight, because I remember I threw a vicious body kick, and he was like, and he told me before, he was like, any other fight, if you'd have landed that body kick on me, it would have crumpled me. But he was like, my trainer kept on telling me, you need to train, not to slack off on this kid. And but watching him and watching through him, watching what he does, what he did throughout his career, or whatnot, I was like, you know what? I can do that. I can do that. So like watching him, even watching Jan too, because Jan won the belt at 39.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
now is just and Jan got a good story too. At one point in time, he was what 1-5 in the UFC. He had a record of 1-5 in the UFC. So, just kind of watching that and watching those stories and whatnot unfold unfold, my headspace is like, okay, I can make this happen. So
Yeah.
now it's me actually committing myself to that. And that's what I did. And the first step I did too is just like, my last couple weeks of training camp, me coming out to Vegas and actually getting me some treatment, um, getting some good training partners. Like right now, I'm cutting weight. Like I was at Couture's yesterday training, and the guys were like, I felt like I was toast. But guys were like, "Hey, do you need to slow down? Do you need to take a break?" I'm like, "No, I got a fight coming up. I like you can go ahead and whoop my ass. I don't care. This is the week that I get my butt whooped, and then the next week is just basically like glorifying sparring."
I love that you mentioned those guys, Jan and Glover. The guys that are still at the top of the division, but also at that, at and around or past that magic number of 40 that is so prevalent in the sports world in general. Everybody looks at that number like, oh, dudes are done at 40 years old. But then we see guys like Glover, like Jan, or in another sport, for example, the sport that you love, football, we see a guy like Tom Brady carrying on and keeping it up and competing and winning at the very highest level of the sport.
Well, again, they're able to do that because they take care of themselves. Like Tom Brady's been taking care of himself for so long. I mean, shoot, LeBron right now is what 37, 38, and
Hmm.
he still moves like he's freaking like 18, just because he spent he spent a lot of money taking care of himself. So that's one of the biggest things I see is guys, taking care of themselves and that high level.
Has I guess has the sort of psychology around taking care of yourself changed over these last, you know, 10,
Heck,
15, 20 years?
yes, tremendously. More like 10 years. I mean,
Hmm.
when I first started doing mixed martial arts, it's just like you weigh in, and after you weigh in, you load up on carbs. Now there's a science to cutting weight. There's a science for everything now. It's just like, okay, this is, you know, Monday I did like a, body composition test or whatnot, and I'm talking to the guys at the PI. I'm like, okay, this is how much calories you burn, at night, and this is how much you can burn. This is how much calories you should be burning during the day when you train and whatnot. I'm like looking at all of like everything is basically numbers. Everything is a numbers game. Calories efficient, like calories intake, like just everything that you do is numbers. Whether you're getting on the scale, that's a number. How many punches you throw, how many miles you run, everything when it comes to training now become numbers. So as long as you get those numbers correct, you're good.
A lot of math.
Yes, a lot of math, a lot of math.
we've sort of been talking about what comes next in your career after you get your hand raised at UFC 274. You get your second win over an idol of yours, Shogun. You actually recently got called out by Alexander Gustafsson, and I mean, it didn't make the most sense. The most sense as far as a call out goes, because he was looking for a fight in May. You were already on a card in May, so that it wasn't never going to happen. But what do you think of the possibility of that fight happening down the line?
Well, that fight, he was trying to make it happen at heavyweight. I'm not fighting at heavyweight anymore.
Right.
So he's just like, I'm not fighting at heavyweight anymore. Like, I came here on Monday. I had to weigh myself. I came in Monday at 228, and on track. So, by the time I leave next Tuesday to go to Arizona, I should be around, 223 at most, 222. So, I'm comfortable where I'm at weight wise and whatnot. And me trying to fight a heavyweight, it's different. I'm not gonna do that to myself because my body is. I sometimes I do walk around heavy, but my body's not used to being. It's kind of like when you're in shape, you're in shape. But when you're out of shape, you're out of shape. But my out of shape is basically walking around heavy. And people are like, "Oh, you still look like you're in shape." I'm like, no, I am freaking out of shape right now. I'm struggling. So, and then if I start to get myself in shape, guess what happens to my weight? Boom, it plummets down. So,
Right.
nah, I'm gonna stick my butt to light heavyweight. I mean, he can come down to light heavy.
Oh, okay. So are you saying that if he's willing to come down to light heavy, that the fight could happen?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Is there anybody else out there then that maybe that you'd be looking at post Shogun?
It doesn't matter. I mean, UFC throw people at me. I'm not the guy to, stray away from fights or whatnot. It's crazy because a big good portion of my career, like it worked out tremendously for me, but at the end of the day, it was like an Achilles heel for me too, where I take a lot of short notice fights. So, I'm known for taking short notice fights. If I think it's good, sometimes it end up working out for me, sometimes it don't. But at the end of the day, I don't stray away from nobody.
Well, I don't want to keep you too much longer, but I have a couple more questions I want to get to. One is specifically about how you've ended fights. You really became known for the Von Flu choke, but I feel like we haven't seen it in a long time.
I don't know. It's just it happens. I know it's there. It's more like a feel thing for me. You grab my neck, I know what to do from there. I know what to do already. Um,
Right.
but if the situation proceeds or whatnot, somebody grab my neck, you might see me go for it. It's just instinctually now. I don't even think about
Would you call it a signature move?
it. I wouldn't call it a signature move. I mean, a lot of times during fights, I see guys grabbing people's neck, and I'm like, "Oh, it's there," and they're like, "Okay, well, if they knew how to do it, they would have done it." But I wouldn't call it a signature move. I do it so much, I don't call it a signature move anymore.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. It sort of just becomes, and I mean, you look for any way to win, right?
Oh yeah, definitely, definitely. I mean, I try to put, the best way to win. I know, our wrestling coach John Leverante, he always talk about you put yourself in your favorite position, and regardless, whatever position I'm in, I always find a way to put myself in my favorite positions, and those positions I feel more comfortable. I can dominate from there, and I don't even have to think about nothing else.
And here's another question. I always want to ask our guys, that are on the platform, on the Millions platform. This is a Millions podcast. What's your experience been like so far with the platform?
But definitely like it. Good questions. This you don't ask the typical questions or whatnot. So that's always a plus because a lot of times you just like you you do podcasts, you do particular interviews or whatnot. Guys always ask the same question, like here we go again, or they can ask it in many different ways. But when you kind of take off from the side, kind of, hey, how did you get into this? What made you think about this or whatnot? Oh, okay, cool. I haven't heard that question in a long while, so now I'm kind of bringing back memories. They're like, funny thing, this is what happened.
Hey, well, tell your friends because we're going to be having a lot more of these shows.
All right, definitely, I definitely will.
And but also on the merch side of things, they've been making you some shirts and stuff.
Yeah, my manager Oren uh, came up with an idea. He was like, man, you need to start a logo, and I got a logo going with the merch stuff, got the shirts going and stuff. So that's pretty dope. And so he started that, and I'm like, okay. And from what I've heard now, the feedback have been actually really, really good.
Hey, well, that's great, man. Well, listen, I just want to say thank you so much for, taking the time out of your busy training schedule. I know that it's pretty intense, especially leading up to a UFC pay-per-view. So thanks so much for joining us, man. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. Take care, bro.
All right, definitely.
Front row seat.